Yeah.
It is extraordinary. I mean, obviously understandable, the focus on Sir David Amess's life and his contribution to public life as an MP, and of course his role as a father and a husband as well. And obviously tribute should rightly be paid at this time. But the focus on, making Southend a city, tackling online hate, particularly anonymous trolls, has completely drowned out any conversation about the threat of Islamist extremism. When we understand from the police and the security authorities that the suspected killer of Sir David Amess was motivated by online Islamist extremist videos. Now, how on earth did that get lost in the mix when it's believed to be the motive for the crime?
Well, I'm afraid it got lost in the mix, Julia, because it's by far the hardest part of the equation to talk about. I think, as you say, it's quite right for tributes to be paid to Sir David. He'd led an extraordinary life as a member of Parliament, looking after his constituents in so many different ways, and really was a champion of many different causes. And it's wonderful that those causes should be recognised and put forward. But there's something very strange about our society if we have a kind and gentle and well-respected MP murdered, brutally murdered, and then we don't talk about why he was murdered or why it appears he was murdered. That seems to me a very strange thing for us to do. And it tells you there's something very wrong with our society, that we're not prepared to tackle the issue that may well have led to his death and speak about it. And this is not new, is it? I mean, we've spent a number of years running away from the idea that radical Islam is a problem for various reasons. We prefer to focus on other forms of extremism. And now, sadly, we see it once again burst out front and centre on the national scene.
And again, it's the idea that it's anonymous trolls online, or it's someone posting abuse of an MP in some way is leading to these terror attacks. We know that, again, the Mirror reports today and the Sun reported yesterday about Anjem Chowdhury, the hate preachers videos, easily available online, sitting there on YouTube for all to see, actually, preaching death and destruction to the West, to democracy, to our Western values. And I do find it quite strange how little that was even touched on at all in this debate. And also the fact that we are talking about keeping MPs safe, and absolutely it's vital that MPs are kept safe, given if they're going to be especially targeted because of their job and their role, and if they speak out on any particular issues. But we as a nation are being targeted. The killers in the London Bridge attacks, the Westminster Bridge attack, the Manchester Arena attack, and all these other things. They weren't they weren't targeting MPs. They were targeting us ordinary British citizens and tourists and people happening to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So we're all at risk here, and focusing purely on keeping MPs safe does rather miss the real issue, which is we need to stop the threat.
Well, that's exactly right. And Julia, what you just highlighted is obvious to ordinary people to see. If you look at what ordinary people out there are saying, they're going, why aren't we talking about why Sir David was murdered?
Yeah.
It's not because people were being nasty to each other on Twitter. Yeah. It wasn't because a troll decided to post an online threat and then came after him in person. It occurred because someone decided, it appears, from what we understand so far, to have taken a several hours long journey deliberately to come to his constituency, to stand in line, and then to brutally murder him. And why? It would again appear in the name of religion. Now, that's got nothing to do with online hatred or that kind. It's to do with belief systems and ideology. And we're scared of looking at this because it's so far away from our normal framework. We're also scared of it, unfortunately, Julia, because in the last few years, anyone who has dared raised issues about the threat of radical Islam is immediately deemed a racist and thrown to the sides
and Islamophobic.
And that's a huge problem.
And that is the issue, isn't it? Oh, we all had it. I mean, David Cameron, when he raised issues about people being integrated into society, and we talk about this multicultural society we have, and that's simply not the case in many circumstances in many of our towns and cities. Actually, we have parallel societies living next door to each other who don't mix at all, and that is a really big issue in this country. And how do we tackle this problem if we are not going to speak about it? I brought it up with a number of MP guests yesterday, and you could feel the discomfort. You could feel the sort of, oh God, oh what's the nasty lady saying? I'm in no way, I get this abuse all the time. I'm not Islamophobic. I'm not racist. I have nothing against Muslims. I've got nothing against immigrants. It's nothing. It is the simple matter of fact that the vast majority of people in this country who have born, the man who's a suspect is a British citizen born in this country, whether you're first or second generation or third generation immigrant, whether you're Muslim, whether you're any other religion whatsoever, are good people, law-abiding people who just want to live a normal, happy, peaceful life and have a family and a job and just get on with normal life. There is nevertheless a minority, but it's, as we know, it's not a tiny minority. We know that the authorities are concerned about some 40,000 plus people, and those people on that list who are concerned, we're concerned about, but aren't actually being followed because they're not of the heightened concern. They do have a habit, it would appear, of turning up with weapons and killing people. Now, this is the issue, isn't it? Is that we are not talking about a few dozen people. We are talking about, tens of thousands of people who wish to hurt our country, their fellow people. They despise our values, they despise our democracy, and they want to bring it down. We need to talk about this and tackle it.
Absolutely right. I mean, you hit the nail on the head here. And by the way, the number's clearly more than tens of thousands, because if it is, again, correct that this suspect committed the murder, he, if you recall, was referred to the PREVENT programme when he was 17 years old, wasn't taken through it, therefore wasn't on a watch list. So think about that for a second. People who've been referred to programs and then not been followed up, probably tens of thousands more beyond what we have here. And of course, that's a serious issue for this country. If there are people living among us who hate the rest of their citizens and wish to attack the foundations of our society. So what do we do about it? We have to go to the source, don't we? We can't just wait and say we must protect MPs, because as you've said, it's not just MPs who are targets. All of us are potential targets. We can't just protect bridges. We can't do this. That's a very defensive approach. We have to surely go to the root of the problem, which is unintegrated communities, ghettoized communities. Go in there and try and integrate and assimilate them using the power of the state to do that. And there is a model for this. A few years ago, Dame Louise Casey, now Baroness Casey, did a big review. You may remember this, the Casey review, looking at just this issue, where she had gone around the country and found pockets of the country where 75% of people thought Britain was a Muslim country because they were so unintegrated that the only people they saw were other Muslims. And again, this is not simply a Muslim issue, of course it isn't, but clearly we have a problem with certain radicalization occurring in that particular community that lends itself to violent attacks. And as a result, we have to look at where are the pockets of unintegrated people in this country and how do we bring them in? And that requires people making hard and tough choices and saying, we will now focus on this as an urgent issue. And you want to talk about levelling up, Julia, there's nothing better than levelling up than making areas integrated and, if you like, not multicultural is the wrong word, but you want to make them a place where everyone respects one another and everyone knows one another in that sense. And if you want to talk about something like David Amos's law, people were saying, oh, David's law must be about social media. That wasn't what the man was about. The man was about bringing communities together. And you saw that, by the way, with the lovely tributes paid to him by his own Muslim community in Southend, as well as, of course, every other community in Southend. Surely the appropriate focus for David's law ought to be on integrating those communities that thus far have been allowed to live separately and bringing them together in the name of national cohesion. If we don't do that, we run the risk of this repeating time and time again.
Dr. Alan Mendoza, thank you. Always good to talk to you.